Hi, it's Clark on Temptress. Today we're going to do another battery review. This is the Blue Heron Extreme series. I have the 100 amp hour unit here. This ain't a cheap battery, but I think this one might actually be worth the money to some of you. If for no other reason, watch this video because we're gonna see what a battery could be if it was built right. Okay, this is the Blue Heron Extreme. They have an Extreme series. I think they only have 2 units in it. They have other batteries. In fact, they'll do custom batteries for you, but they're not your normal battery. And they don't cost normal battery price. 100 amp hour battery, if you look around Amazon now, the low end, you're gonna find things around $150-ish, a little more than that, but this ain't that. This is $787 for this battery. But it's the first battery I've seen that does everything that a battery really should do. So if budget isn't a concern for you, you might want to seriously consider this. I've been looking at the epochs and what all else? SEK, SOK, I guess it is. None of them have done everything I've wanted it to. Mostly you'll hear me harp on the fact that you're paying that kind of money for a battery and they are just not balanced when they arrived. Well, this company does things right, but let me do it in order. The other battery offered in this Extreme series is their 300 amp hour battery. It's very similar. It's $1,459. Their price per amp hour actually goes down as the batteries get bigger. And that's odd because usually it's the other way around, you know? They sell fewer of the bigger ones and they charge more from them. This company actually puts labor, American labor and Chinese labor in both of the manufacturing places into every individual battery. So it's the same labor no matter how big the battery is. So that kind of does even things out a bit. Let's start out with the physical. This is your basic Group 27 battery that makes it 12.1 inches by 6.6 inches by 8.3. It weighs a whopping 27 pounds. Batteries are getting lighter, but this one isn't so much. And once you see inside, you'll know why. There's a lot of structure that's left out of most batteries. The BMS, the personality of the thing, you know, it's limited to 150 amps. And that's a good number, continuous. It'll go up to 500 amps for 30 seconds. So, you know, it's no slouch. That's a real kick out some power BMS. If you want that kind of power, you know, continuously, you're gonna want more than one of these because it's gonna go dead in just, you know, like, what, 45 minutes. So when you have a lot of them, then that amp number goes up. So you just don't even want any more BMS than this. And you can see from the top, there's a heatsink coming through. Some other companies are doing this now. In this one, they're doing it the more right way, where they're mounting the BMS actually in the lid. And this is the BMS's actual true heatsink panel. It's not doing some thick thermal paste or something hoping to pipe the heat up and out. I mean, that's better than just putting it in the box, but this would be the best. Also, if you touch this or inspect this, that's a real good indication of the temperature of that part. The battery has an on and off switch under this little protective cover. I have it on now. It comes up for off, and it's a real switch, unlike you know, one that you just have to push and hope it changes phase. You can see from the switch when it's depressed, it's on, and when it's up, it's off. It has a strap for carrying it, of course, convenient thing, and it comes off, so let me get it out of our way. It has a little display that tells you the percent of charge, you know, gross level, 0, 25, I guess it would be 25, 50, 75, and 100. This is mostly fully charged. You've got 2 data lines. You can daisy chain up the batteries. It comes with this little pack here that includes the daisy chain wire, so every battery has a wire to go to the next one. And actually, these are kind of neat. They're 2 little plastic caps, but when you rig up a battery, you kind of want to often cover the terminals. You know, if it's in a real safe place, you don't care, but Like in my camper, it's in a closet, and I'm afraid somebody will drop like a metal coat hanger, though I don't allow metal coat hangers in that closet, on it someday. So I make sure there are these rubber boots that I put over that do a fair job of covering them. They have these little caps, and you can press them on over after you're all set up, and they lock on there pretty hard. I put one on and I had to pry it off with a screwdriver, so I'm not going to put them on again now. But, you know, that's a really good protection. That's really, really easy to do. Simple thing. I mean, but, you know, when you're charging this much, you can put a little effort into engineering something like this, and then we get it. And, of course, you've got the 2 terminals like normal. I have it currently bolted onto my inverter because at the end of this video, we're going to really suck some power out of this and, you know, see if it heats up or anything. The BMS comms can also hook to a Victron type of a system, and a lot of other inverters and chargers and stuff will speak the Victron language. This battery will do its best at telling the Victron when to stop charging, but it really doesn't know. And I've talked to the company, and you know, it doesn't know. It's got an idea. I'm sort of at 100, but it doesn't know. The bank manager knows, and I really don't recommend you use those Victron cables because I think the bank manager is a much better way for the battery, but it has them, and you know, so it's available. It has a heater inside, and I believe it's a little bit more oomph to their heaters than other heaters. Just means they heat up faster, of course. The reason the heater is in there is all really good batteries. The BMS watches the temperature, of course, and its main job is things are getting too hot, they might be getting dangerous, I'm shutting down. And I don't think there's a BMS in the world that doesn't do that. I certainly wouldn't want to buy one. But the better ones will watch and they say, well, it's too cold because you can't charge lithium when it's below freezing. If you do, you destroy the cells. And this guy will, of course, stop the power from going there. But like some really good batteries, it will actually take the incoming power if the solar were to come on some really chilly morning and start giving power to the battery. It redirects it to a heating blanket, which will heat up the cells, and then when the cells are adequately warm, then it'll allow a charge. So, you know, but that's not wildly uncommon. They have a tremendously good, I think, support structure. Now, most batteries we buy, they take the cells, they shove them in the case, maybe putting some tape of some kind around them just to hold them together. Most companies just jam some foam around it just so it doesn't bounce around inside the case. But cells, actually, these prismatic cells do better and live longer and handle abuse better if they're actually held under compression so that they can actually build internal pressure without puffing out. This guy has a really good method of doing that. Some extruded aluminum, so it's very, very rigid, of course, and very flat. Straps to hold it together. I understand they actually need a little bit of expansion space, so if you do it with metal, you've got to kind of make some allowances. This has some foam in there, and I imagine the foam's main job is just to make the plate that's holding in and the end cell conform to each other so you don't get hard spots. But that's my idea of it. I haven't expanded enough cells, and destroyed them to know. And then finally, it has something called conformal coating on the electronics, on the circuit board of the BMS. I'm a big fan of that. I put it in all my bank managers, even though it's fairly expensive to have done. It's a layer of glue, glue, paint, whatever. All the military stuff I've done requires it. And what it does is, the traces and everything are copper, and this is another layer of protection right on the board. The conformal coatings there's a lot of requirements, but they have to deal with electrostatic transmission. The heat has to be able to move through them, but water can't move through them. Your basic protection. Anyway, they went to that extra step. They have a lot of claims about their cells, and you see claims about cells all the time. I'm on record for saying, If you're run-of-the-mill Chinese marketing company that is selling batteries is making a claim on the cell, it's probably just because they wanted to claim what the other guys are claiming, or maybe a little more. I kind of believe this company. I've been talking to the guys there, and I think they're really doing it right, or they've snowed me, but I believe them. They claim that their cells should be good for 6,000 to 8,000 cycles. And that's a big number because, 4 is usually kind of what we expect, right? That's still a lot. It's still an awful lot. But they do more in the acquiring of cells and only get the best cells, to the point where I believe they're cherry picking cells. They are having their Chinese manufacturer, they're actually assembled in China, very closely match the internal resistance of the cells. They hire an independent company that oversees that company to make sure they're doing a good job. And that's important. I've talked to a lot of people over the years about Chinese manufacturing. We're kind of used to thinking, well, they make crap because that's what we see on eBay and Alibaba. But they can make great stuff, but you have to watch it. So they've hired an overseeing guy to be there to make sure that that they're doing the right thing. And then this is the part that's really cool. Before the battery leaves China, it goes through a few charge cycles and actually lets the BMS balance the cells. And this BMS has enough oomph to do it. It's still slow, but it's enough. Where I've seen them that really can only put out 30 milliamps, in their balance function. This guy supposedly can put out 100. So, it's in the reasonable stage. So it goes through a few actual charge cycles in China before it's shipped here. That's important because that balances the cells, but also, and very important, is that builds something. I haven't gone into this before because it's a little bit deep, but it's important to know. It's interesting. They put it through these cycles and it builds this SEI layer. The anode of a lithium iron phosphate, when it's just assembled, is just kind of virgin material touching the electrolyte. And when you actually start using the battery, this SEI gets built up. And the SEI has good and bad. You can't make it not happen, but you could make it build wrong. If it's built right, it's built under controlled environment and it's built early in the cell's life. And it makes for a thicker, better, more consistent SEI layer that protects the cell from degrading. Nobody else does this. There's a bunch of ways the cells degrade and the SEI protects them throughout the life of the cell, but one of the main things is just in storage, without an SEI layer, the cell degrades. Well, what's the history of these things? Basically, they're manufacturing batteries, so you buy cells just in time because you don't want to keep an inventory. First off, physical space, and second off, that's a lot of capital that's tied up, and you just want to get it just before you're ready to use it. So they're pretty fresh cells. And you put them together, and then you've got a storage time. You're going to store them for a while until you can sell them to a customer because you can't control the customer. And then they're going to sit on a ship and be shipped for a while. They're not flying these in. They're expensive, so it comes in slow. And then the customer in the United States resells them on Amazon, but they're waiting for you, so it's still in storage. All of that time, the SEI layer is protecting the cell from that storage degradation. So that's good. In the case of this company, the parent company in the United States now gets their hand on these batteries. And they don't just store them and ship them like everybody else. They actually unpack them, inspect them, run them through more charge cycles. When this battery came to me, I looked into the BMS on my phone, the connection over Bluetooth, and this particular battery had 5 cycles on it already before it got into my hands. They do a couple other full cycles to make sure that it's meeting their requirements. They check that it's balanced and they make sure it's balanced before it leaves them. And then they pack it up again, and that's what came to me. The downside of the SEI layer, remember, it's going to get built anyway, whether it gets built well or not, if it gets built early and has full protection of the life of the cells, or it doesn't get built until you install it in your boat, it is going to get built. And this The downside is important to know about. When these cells are brand new virgin cells, like they all are when they come to me from other battery companies, and I charge them up high, get them balanced, and then I run them through a discharge cycle through my little device here, and I figure out how many amp hours they put out. Well, they'll never put that number out again. They degrade quite a bit over the first, maybe 10 discharges. I don't know the number exactly. That's why when you buy a cell that is a 100 amp hour cell, you always get it with a bigger number. I charged this up with the bank manager to 100%, like I always do. I charged it up more to see what the balance was. The balance numbers were really good. Right out of the box, as it arrived, when I got the cells up to the top cell of 3.65 volts, the lowest cell was 0.066 volts below. My acceptance range is 0.1 volt, so yay. It usually takes me a good long time. I mean, at least days of holding it at elevated voltage, but I've had them take weeks and I've had them where they wouldn't balance. Well, this guy came out of the box balanced. If you bought one of these batteries, you should take it out of the box and put it into your installation and feel good about it. You don't have to do pre-work. But as I said, the capacity is going to go down over time. And since this battery has already been burnt in, it's already had that 5 cycles. When I put one more cycle on it and I measured it, I found 103.12 amp hours that came out of the battery. Still over 100, yay. That's why if you see me do the same testing on a cheaper battery, I might get a number like 107, 106, maybe 108, and this is 103. That's actually kind of really 103. Had I taken the time on those other batteries to do 6, 7 cycles, they would probably come down to that closer to 100 number. I guess the last thing I want to mention about the case and such is this is only on the smaller battery, on the 100. There are these little metal feet that you can connect to the bottom. They come out the sides so that you can then bolt them down. Otherwise, the battery needs to be locked in a more normal battery method, and the 300 definitely has to do that. I guess the last thing we want to do now is I've hooked it up to this inverter. I've got the inverter hooked to a space heater, and I'm going to turn the space heater on, see what is being drawn, leave it on for 15, 20 minutes, and then come back and see if anything gets warm. Okay, let me turn the inverter on. Well, let me first turn on my amp meter. All calibrated to 0. Let me hook it on there. And let's give it a go. Inverter on. Let's go make a noise. The battery just shut down. Don't like that. Don't like that at all. This inverter draws some power to start up. I had already connected it through a resistor, so the first stage capacitors were all charged up. I have connected this inverter to 100 amp hour batteries before, and the BMS did not shut down. Can't say I like it, and I'm going to talk to the guy. The guy, by the way, his name is Hank. I've been talking to him. He's the chief engineer there, really knows his stuff, and he's a sailor. He's got more miles on the ocean than I do, and when he's not working on batteries, he's going around to yacht clubs and stuff doing talks, obviously selling batteries, but he knows his stuff. Let's try it again. And it happened again. I don't like that. I mean, just for my convenience here, I could hook my power supply up and give it enough power to get this thing going, and I'm sure it would go. I could just keep trying it, try to charge up the capacitors. I think I'm going to bring in the power supply. And then it comes right up. Well, the power supply is now putting out 3 amps at a low voltage, so it's charging the battery. So I know the battery is up. So I'm going to turn off the power supply. And let's just to make sure here, let's turn on the heater. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to turn on one side of the heater, and I get 53 amps coming out of the battery. I've got 5.4 amps coming out of AC, which is just about right. And I'm going to turn the other side on. Now we're drawing 122 amps. It's only supposed to put out 150, but this is as close as I can get through this inverter. And start a timer. I'll see you in 15 or 20 minutes. Let's see what's happening. Okay, this has been going on for a while. It's been 23 minutes. I've used 50%, 56% of the battery's power through this and my space heater. The voltage at the battery got down to 12.6. I think I can turn this off now so we don't have to listen to it. Let's take a look at the heat. What do we get? 94 degrees on the plate. Here's my hand. You know, it's actually cooler than my hand. The hot thing in the frame here is the wire, because, you know, these wires aren't the greatest. I got them from Amazon, probably aluminum again. No problem with the battery. It's managing its heat well. While this was cooking, I had a call with Hank at Blue Heron. He's going to get back to me, and I'll get this information in the video. Looks like the wires inside are plenty big. I'll put on the screen here the actual size of the wires, but there's one large red wire, as you can see in the photo of the inside, going to the positive connection, and then a group of black wires, a little bit smaller, going to the BMS and then to the negative connection. So, you know, the common thing. I talked to him about the shutoff on the inverter, and it's not what we think, what I thought. It's not some kind of this is taking too much power and this is shutting down from a power point of view. Apparently, there was a safety requirement put into this BMS to meet UL listing. UL is the American Underwriters Laboratory. It is the only legitimate, I think, electrical certification. And it's really hard to get. They're really, really strict. CE, the European one, is a joke. You know, it basically says, I didn't use lead, or I did use lead, but I was able to double talk my way around using lead. It just doesn't mean anything. CE, you could still pass CE and burn down a boat, you know. But UL it's been around forever, and it keeps getting added to. It's loads and loads of bureaucracy. This BMS actually meets UL requirements. And part of meeting the UL requirement is it has to watch the power that's coming out here that's getting echoed back to it. And if there's too much AC on the DC line, it's going to shut down. Well, that's apparently why it shut down. This inverter is a cheap Chinese high-frequency inverter. If you have Victron stuff or Xantrex or Old Heart or any of that, those are low frequency and they're going to be good and they're not going to cause this problem. But there's a lot of these cheap Chinese inverters in the world, and apparently they throw a horrible mess out on the DC line that tells this guy to trip. Boy, you know, I think if you have the budget to buy these batteries, you probably have Victron gear or better, or, you know, or other stuff of that level. So maybe it just doesn't matter. But I think we have to know that. If this guy would trip because of signal, it would trip if we had 10 of the batteries. So maybe they're a little bit dilettante, but on the other hand, you know, that's safety, that's quality, that's watching for you that something bad has happened. If you've got something that is throwing really bad power down the DC line, also this might not happen to you because your wires are going to be way longer than mine. You know, what's your chance of having your inverter that close to the battery? I have a 2-foot wire and a 1-foot wire. The longer the wire, the more capacitance is going to be there to mellow out that AC signal. Okay, well, that'll have to be your call unless I hear more about it and refilm this section. But it looks like it's not going to be really great with really cheap inverters. Other than that, let's go through the leaderboard and see how I rate it. First, capacity. It's 103 amp hours, and we're paying for 100, so it's going to get full marks there. It gets maybe extra marks because it's gone through that cycle already that lowers the output, so it's a legitimate 103. If you see other batteries that are saying 108 or more, you might end up in the 90s eventually. But this one's a little more legitimate, so I'm sure it'll even out a full 100. Cells. Well, I got to give it the highest marks. I'm going to give it extra bonus points. They put great effort into the cells in choosing them. They've got 2 layers of people actually testing them and cycling them and building up an SEI layer under controlled environment. It goes into storage with that already built, and it arrives balanced. Listen to that. The rest of you battery companies, they've got a battery that's arriving balanced. Okay, I can't really complain when you buy a battery for $150 and it's not balanced because they've got to cut pennies any way they can, and you know, we accept that. But for you guys that are charging thousands of dollars for your batteries, you can do this. It won't break your bank. We're going to demand it. And let's all demand it. So if you want to buy something in this price range, you guys, this is the guy. Build quality. Yeah. It's brought the heatsink out. The BMS is everything I could ask for except for that shutdown problem. But that is because it meets UL listing and no other BMS even gets near the testing that I know of. Please correct me if I'm wrong. In the comments down below, I really like it when you just say, hey, thanks for the video. Yeah, sure, great. I love that. I appreciate that. The algorithm likes it. You guys that just say, touching your comments to give you one, yay, because it all helps my channel. But what I really like is when people say, I have one of these and it is great because of this. I have something like this and it's really bad because of this. Because, you know, I'm doing what studies I'm doing, but I'm also making this placeholder in YouTube that we can then all go down and get other people's experience, and then this becomes the definitive guide to this battery. So thanks. Build quality, full excellent. Case, again, excellent. It's got the ribbing in it, that the way that they're supporting the internal structure, those prismatic cells, is through the roof, great. Yeah, excellent. I like the hold down feet. I wish they had the hold down feet on the bigger battery, but I imagine the reason they don't do it on the 300 amp hour case is that is heavier and the feet are not like super, they're kind of sheet metal bent. So maybe it's just not strong enough. And this company doesn't do things halfway. The company, well, there's nothing like them. Not only, like I called Hank up to get some answers to those questions and you know, got him right on the phone, and he has the answer. He's the chief engineer of the project, and he actually understands batteries. I'm communicating with these other battery companies, and I don't mind it so much when the cheap ones really don't know, but they really don't know batteries. I've had communications with them, phone meetings, where I'm talking to the head of their technology about balancing, and they said, yes, we balance our batteries. And I said, well, I got to beg to differ. These are not balanced. And then I said, what do you think balancing means? Could you explain it to me? And they were explaining cell selection, where they're choosing cells that are all at the same internal resistance. Good on them, that's important, but that's not balancing. They didn't know what top-end balancing even meant, and they thought they were doing it. And, you know, that's fine. You know, if a 100 amp hour battery is costing you 160 bucks, it's worth it. But for the high-end batteries, I expect the company to be high-end. And not only this one impresses me, but they have a consulting branch. And, you know, most of you are not going to need this, but knowing that the company does this kind of stuff, If you're a heavy equipment company and you need lithium to start your used once in a year front loader, whatever kind of a gear, and lead is always going dead on you and you want lithium, they will design one for you to meet whatever your needs are. And, you're going to get a custom battery if necessary. And most companies aren't set up to even think about doing that. They'll also really answer your questions because they know. So anyway, enough on that. Better than excellent for the company. So cost to value. Again, if it's a cheap battery and it's crap, well, it's not worth it. If it's a cheap battery and it's really pretty great, excellent. But then after that, as the price of the battery goes up, either this has to get more excellent or the amount of extra excellence is important to you. Last week I did the review of the big 320 amp hour PUP battery, the one with the metal case. Easy, excellent. I mean, it did everything you really needed to do. The only thing down about it is it had a metal case if you wanted to be in a saltwater environment, but that same company sells a plastic case version. So excellent, easy. This guy costs a lot more. Their 300 amp hour offering is fully 3 times the price of the PUP. And the PUP functioned great. And this functions great. But this does some things the PUP doesn't do. And you've got to decide, do you retain that excellent cost to value because either money's not absolutely the #1 reason for choosing, or you really need a true drop-in that you don't have to screw with, or you really need to depend on it and you need it to have a UL listed BMS and you need it to basically hold up longer because of all the care that was put into treating the cells properly, building that SEI layer the right way. For you, it's still excellent. So I'm going to give them excellent and you just have to decide. I think this is a really cool battery company. And I don't really usually buy expensive things just because they're expensive. There is no, I don't know, what is it, Christian Dior or whatever. I would never date a woman that needs a handbag that costs more than a car. It's just, even if she wanted it, it just is telling. That's not this. There's legitimate reasons why it could cost more, and you have to decide. Okay, that's my review of the Blue Heron Extreme battery. Hope you like it. Please do all the, things one does. Sign up as a subscriber. It helps the channel and it just makes me feel so good. I know I'm harping on it and I'm begging, but I'm getting so close to 100,000. I can almost taste it. I should be there in a couple months. Please, if you haven't, go out of your way to hit the subscribe button. Thumbs up's always good. Thanks. I guess that's about it. Bye from Clark on Temptress.